The observation deck of the Galactic Arbitration Station hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered around the reinforced viewing platform. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Collective adjusted his ceremonial robes, the silver threads catching the artificial light as he glanced toward the human delegation with barely concealed contempt. "I still cannot believe the Terrans had the audacity to send a child," he whispered to his aide, his voice carrying the melodic undertones that marked his species' communication. "This is the most important arbitration in galactic history, and they send someone who looks barely old enough to comprehend interstellar law." The subject of his disdain sat quietly in the corner of the human section, her legs crossed beneath her on the specially reinforced chair designed to accommodate her species' denser bone structure. Maya Chen appeared to be no more than 16 standard years old by human reckoning, though the assembled aliens struggled to determine exact ages among the peculiar Deathworld species. Her dark hair fell in simple waves around her shoulders, and she wore what the other delegates had learned was typical human casual attire: dark pants and a fitted shirt in deep blue. What unsettled the other delegates wasn't her youth or her unremarkable appearance. It was her absolute stillness. For the past 3 hours of preliminary discussions, she had not moved. Not to shift her weight, not to adjust her position, not even to blink with any regularity that the others could detect. She simply sat, her dark eyes fixed on the central arbitration platform, her breathing so controlled it appeared she might not need oxygen at all. "The Deathworlders train their young for war," rumbled Thokran, the massive Gorvani representative, his tusks clicking against his respirator. "Look at her posture. She sits like a predator waiting to strike." "Impossible," scoffed Dr. Isara, the Centaurian scientific advisor, her tentacles writhing in agitation. "Our psychological profiles indicate humans require constant stimulation. Their neural pathways are designed for rapid response to environmental changes. No human can maintain such focus for extended periods without showing signs of stress or fatigue." The irony wasn't lost on those who knew human history that Dr. Isara had devoted her career to studying humanity while consistently underestimating them. Her species had been among the first to encounter humans during their expansion into the galaxy, and the initial reports had been dismissive at best. Humans were a young species from a death world, the reports had said. Their technology was crude, their society chaotic, and their biology unsuited for civilized space travel. That assessment had proven catastrophically wrong. The Galactic Arbitration Station itself stood as a testament to humanity's rapid integration into galactic society. Built in the neutral zone between the major galactic powers, it had been designed by human engineers using principles that had revolutionized space construction. The station could withstand the gravitational stress of 3 different stellar phenomena simultaneously, and its internal atmosphere could be adjusted to accommodate the biological needs of over 40 different species. But today's arbitration wasn't about construction techniques or trade agreements. Today would determine whether humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council or whether they would remain relegated to the status of developing species under the protection and guidance of their supposed betters. The case that had brought them all here was complex, involving disputed mining rights in the Kepler sector, accusations of treaty violations, and claims of aggressive expansion by human colonies. 3 separate galactic powers had filed formal complaints, and the decision would set precedent for humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. Maya Chen had been selected as Earth's representative not despite her age, but because of it. At 16, she was already a graduate of the Terran Diplomatic Academy, fluent in 47 galactic languages, and holder of advanced degrees in xenobiology, interstellar law, and tactical analysis. What the other delegates didn't know was that she was also something else entirely. The great doors of the arbitration chamber opened with a pneumatic hiss, and Chief Arbitrator Veltar entered, his elongated form moving with the deliberate grace that marked his species' reverence for ceremony. The Velnari had served as neutral arbitrators for over 3 millennia. Their natural empathic abilities and cultural obsession with justice making them ideal mediators for interspecies disputes. Esteemed delegates, Veltar's voice carried through the chamber's translation matrix, reaching each being in their native language, we gather today to determine the matter of Terran colonial rights versus the combined grievances of the Zephyrian Collective, the Gorvani Trade Federation, and the Centaurian Scientific Protectorate. The chief arbitrator's large, multifaceted eyes swept across the assembled delegates before settling on the human section. Maya remained perfectly still, though something shifted in her gaze. It was subtle, like the difference between a lake at rest and a lake that has frozen over something dangerous beneath. The charges are as follows, Veltar continued, his voice taking on the formal cadence of legal proceedings. Unauthorized terraforming of the Kepler 442 system, violation of the Treaty of Non-Interference regarding pre-sentient species, aggressive expansion tactics resulting in the displacement of established mining operations and the creation of military installations in claimed neutral territory. Each charge was serious enough to result in humanity being placed under permanent galactic supervision. Combined, they could lead to the forcible relocation of all human colonies and the effective end of their species' independence. Ambassador Kethvar rose from his seat, his robes rustling with practiced ceremony. Chief Arbitrator, honored delegates, what we face today is not merely a legal matter but a question of galactic security itself. The Terran species has demonstrated a pattern of aggressive expansion and disregard for established law that threatens the stability our civilization has maintained for millennia. He gestured toward the central display, where a holographic representation of the Kepler sector appeared, showing the disputed territories in stark detail. In less than 50 standard years since their first contact with galactic civilization, humans have established colonies on 17 worlds, constructed mining operations on 43 asteroids, and built what they claim are research stations in 6 different systems. This rate of expansion is unprecedented and unsustainable. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian Collective had built their civilization on careful, deliberate expansion over thousands of years. The idea of such rapid growth was not merely alien to them, it was deeply threatening. Furthermore, Kethvar continued, his voice rising with righteous indignation, they have consistently ignored established protocols for dealing with developing ecosystems. The terraforming of Kepler 442b proceeded without proper environmental impact studies or consideration for indigenous life forms. 7 species of plant life and 3 species of small mammals have been driven to extinction by their careless atmospheric modifications. Dr. Isara activated her personal display, adding her own evidence to the proceedings. Our scientific analysis supports Ambassador Kethvar's claims. Human terraforming techniques prioritize speed over sustainability, using aggressive atmospheric processors and introduced species that disrupt natural ecological balance. They appear incapable of the patience required for proper world development. Thokran's contribution was more direct. They build weapons. Every human research station is equipped with defensive systems that exceed anything needed for protection against pirates or natural phenomena. They are preparing for war, as is the nature of all Deathworld species. Throughout these accusations, Maya Chen remained motionless. Other human delegates might have shifted uncomfortably or prepared counter-arguments, but she sat like a statue carved from living stone. Her breathing was so steady it seemed mechanical, her posture so perfect it appeared effortless. What none of the other delegates realized was that Maya wasn't simply listening to their accusations. She was analyzing them, breaking down each statement for factual accuracy, logical consistency, and underlying motivation. Her mind, trained from childhood in the brutal academic environment of the Terran Diplomatic Academy, processed information at a rate that would have astonished even Dr. Isara's sophisticated understanding of human neurology. The Academy had been humanity's response to their early diplomatic failures in galactic society. Traditional human approaches to negotiation, with their emphasis on emotional appeal and rapid-fire debate, had proven disastrous when dealing with species that communicated through chemical signals, subsonic vibrations, or complex mathematical formulations. The Academy had developed new training methods, pushing selected human children through accelerated programs that taught them to think like aliens, to process information like living computers, and to maintain absolute control over their emotional and physical responses. Maya was the Academy's greatest success, and, though she didn't know it yet, its most dangerous creation. Chief Arbitrator Veltar allowed the accusations to continue for another hour, his empathic senses reading the emotional currents in the chamber. He detected the expected mixture of fear, anger, and righteousness from the accusers, but what puzzled him was the complete absence of any emotional resonance from the human delegation. It was as if they weren't really there at all. "The accused will now present their defense," Veltar announced, his voice carrying a note of curiosity that only the most sensitive translators caught. The other human delegates looked toward their senior ambassador, but he gestured toward Maya. She rose from her chair with fluid grace, her movements finally breaking the uncanny stillness that had marked her presence. When she stood, several delegates were surprised by her height. Human females of her apparent age were typically smaller, but Maya stood nearly 6 feet tall, her frame suggesting the lean strength that came from growing up in higher gravity than most species could tolerate. She walked to the central platform without notes, without display devices, without any of the ceremonial trappings the other speakers had used. When she reached the designated speaking position, she turned to face the assembled delegates and opened her mouth to speak. Then she stopped. For 13 seconds, Maya Chen stood in absolute silence, her dark eyes moving from one delegate to another, meeting each gaze in turn. The silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable, then unsettling, then genuinely disturbing. Several delegates shifted in their seats. Dr. Isara's tentacles writhed with increasing agitation. Ambassador Kethvar's ceremonial jewelry clinked softly as his hands trembled with suppressed irritation. In that silence, something fundamental shifted in the chamber's atmosphere. The other delegates had been prepared for human bluster, for emotional appeals, for the chaotic energy they associated with the Deathworld species. They had not been prepared for a predator's patience. When Maya finally spoke, her voice was quiet, clear, and utterly without emotion. "You have made several accusations against my species," she said, her words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Before I respond to them, I need to correct a fundamental misunderstanding that appears to underlie your complaints." She gestured, and to everyone's surprise, a holographic display activated. No one had seen her access any controls, but somehow she had interfaced with the chamber's presentation system. "You believe," she continued, "that humanity is expanding aggressively into galactic space. You believe we are building military installations and disrupting established order. You believe we are impatient, destructive, and dangerous." The display showed a three-dimensional map of known space, with different colors indicating the territories controlled by various galactic powers. Human space appeared as small green dots scattered among vast swaths of other civilizations. "You are correct about exactly one of those things," Maya said, and for the first time something resembling a smile touched her lips. "We are dangerous. but not in the way you think. She manipulated the display, and the view zoomed in on human space, showing the colonies and installations in unprecedented detail. You see 17 colonies and call it aggressive expansion. We see 17 footholds in a galaxy that tried to keep us contained on a single world. You see terraforming operations and call them destructive. We see worlds being prepared for life in a universe where life is precious and rare. You see defensive installations and call them preparation for war. The display shifted again, and suddenly the delegates were looking at detailed scans of every major military installation in the galaxy. Zephyrian battle stations, Gorvani defense platforms, Centaurian research vessels equipped with weapons that could shatter planets. We see a galaxy already at war with itself, where every major power maintains enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems, and we wonder why our small defensive measures seem so threatening to you. The silence that followed was different from the one that had preceded her speech. This was the silence of prey animals realizing they had cornered something that wasn't prey at all. But perhaps, Maya continued, her voice still carrying that unsettling calm, we should address your specific accusations directly. Let us begin with the matter of Kepler 442b and the question of environmental destruction. The holographic display shifted to show Kepler 442b in exquisite detail. The planet hung in the center of the chamber like a jewel, its blue-green surface marbled with white clouds and brown continental masses. But as Maya manipulated the controls with subtle gestures, the image changed, showing the world as it had been before human terraforming began. "Dr. Isara," Maya said, her voice carrying across the chamber with mechanical precision, "your report states that 7 plant species and 3 mammalian species were driven to extinction by human terraforming. Would you care to explain how you determined this?" The Centaurian scientist's tentacles writhed uncomfortably. Standard ecological surveys were conducted both before and after the terraforming process. The missing species are clearly documented in the comparative analysis. "Interesting," Maya replied, and the display zoomed in to show the planet's southern continent. "Because according to our records, no comprehensive ecological survey of Kepler 442b was ever conducted by Centaurian forces. In fact, your species has never set foot on the planet." A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Dr. Isara's chromatophores flickered through several colors before settling on an angry purple. "That is, we conducted orbital surveys, advanced scanning techniques that cannot detect life forms smaller than 50 kilograms from orbital distance," Maya interrupted smoothly. "I know because I have read the technical specifications for every scanner your species has ever developed. Some of them are quite ingenious, actually." The compliment, delivered in the same emotionless tone as everything else she had said, somehow made it more unsettling rather than less. Maya gestured again, and the display shifted to show detailed biological surveys. The 7 plant species Dr. Isara mentioned do appear to have vanished from the planet's surface. What her report fails to mention is that all 7 were parasitic species that were slowly killing the host organisms they depended upon. The 3 mammalian species were already extinct before humans arrived, victims of a plague that had been spreading through the ecosystem for decades. The display showed microscopic images, biological charts, and evolutionary timelines that painted a picture far different from the one presented by the accusers. Maya's data was comprehensive, detailed, and impossible to dispute. "Our terraforming process didn't destroy the ecosystem of Kepler 442b, Maya continued. It saved what was left of it. The introduced atmospheric processors were specifically designed to counteract the acidification that was occurring due to volcanic activity in the northern hemisphere. The introduced plant species were selected to form symbiotic relationships with existing flora, not to replace it." Ambassador Kethvar rose from his seat, his ceremonial jewelry chiming with agitation. Even if your version of events is accurate, the fact remains that you conducted these operations without consultation with the proper galactic authorities. The Treaty of Non-Interference clearly states, Article 7, Section 3, Subsection 12, Maya recited without pause. Quote, "No signatory species shall engage in large-scale environmental modification of celestial bodies without prior consultation with the Galactic Environmental Council, except in cases where such modification is necessary to prevent imminent ecological collapse or to preserve endangered sentient species." She gestured again, and legal documents appeared in the display, highlighted in several places. The key phrase being, "except in cases where such modification is necessary to prevent imminent ecological collapse." Which brings us to an interesting legal question. Does the Treaty of Non-Interference actually apply to humanity? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Every delegate in the chamber knew the answer, but none of them wanted to voice it. "Humanity has never been invited to sign the Treaty of Non-Interference," Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "In fact, when our diplomatic corps requested permission to join the treaty framework, we were told that Deathworld species were not considered sufficiently developed to participate in interstellar environmental agreements." Chief Arbitrator Veltar's empathic senses detected a shift in the chamber's emotional atmosphere. The righteousness emanating from the accusers was beginning to curdle into something resembling panic. "So the question becomes," Maya continued, "how can we be accused of violating a treaty we were never allowed to sign, regarding restrictions we were never permitted to accept, in service of an authority that has never recognized our right to exist as equals?" The legal implications of her words rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. If humanity had never been subject to the Treaty of Non-Interference, then most of the accusations against them became legally meaningless. Worse, from the perspective of the other powers, it meant that humanity had been operating without any legal constraints whatsoever. Thokran's massive form shifted in his reinforced chair, the metal creaking under his weight. "The spirit of galactic law still applies," he rumbled through his respirator. "Cooperation between species requires mutual respect and consideration. Your people have shown neither." "Haven't we?" Maya asked, and for the first time there was something that might have been amusement in her voice. The display changed again, showing shipping records, trade agreements, and diplomatic communications. In the 50 years since first contact, humanity has honored every trade agreement we've been permitted to make, provided aid during 7 different natural disasters affecting 4 different species, and contributed more scientific research to the galactic database than any other species in the same time period. The data was overwhelming and undeniable. Humanity's contributions to galactic civilization were staggering, especially considering how recently they had joined it. Medical breakthroughs, technological innovations, and artistic achievements flowed across the display in an endless stream. "The problem," Maya continued, "is not that we have been uncooperative. The problem is that cooperation has been largely one-sided." The display shifted to show military deployment patterns, trade route monopolies, and resource allocation agreements. The picture that emerged was of a galactic civilization that had systematically excluded humanity from meaningful participation, while benefiting enormously from their contributions. When the Gorvani Trade Federation requested assistance with the Sigma Draconis supply crisis, human freighters delivered emergency supplies while Gorvani vessels remained safely in port, claiming the routes were too dangerous. When the Centaurian Protectorate needed new medical techniques to deal with the Rigel plague, human researchers worked for 6 months without compensation to develop effective treatments. When the Zephyrian Collective's colonies in the Outer Rim came under attack by pirates, human security forces provided protection while the Collective's own military forces were mysteriously unavailable. Each example hit the chamber like a physical blow. Maya's delivery remained emotionless, but the weight of accumulated evidence was devastating. And throughout all of this, she continued, we have been repeatedly told that we are too aggressive, too dangerous, too unpredictable to be trusted with full participation in galactic affairs. Dr. Isara's tentacles had stopped their constant movement, hanging limply around her form like deflated balloons. The concerns about human expansion remain valid, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Your species reproduces at an unprecedented rate and requires vast resources to sustain your populations. Do we? Maya asked, and the display shifted to show population statistics and resource consumption data. The current human population across all 17 colonies is approximately 400 million individuals. The Zephyrian Collective, which controls 12 systems, has a population of 2 billion. The Centaurian Protectorate, which controls 8 systems, has a population of 6 billion. The Gorvani Trade Federation spans 24 systems and supports a population of 12 billion. The numbers were stark and undeniable. Humanity's expansion looked aggressive only if one ignored the fact that they had far fewer individuals spread across their territories than any other major galactic power. But perhaps the real issue isn't our population or our expansion rate, Maya continued. Perhaps the real issue is what we represent. She gestured, and the display changed to show evolutionary timelines and biological comparisons between species. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that could be described as garden planets, stable climates, abundant resources, minimal natural threats. Your evolution proceeded along predictable paths that emphasized cooperation, consensus, and gradual development. The evolutionary charts showed the clear patterns Maya described. Each species had developed complex social structures designed to maintain stability and avoid conflict. Humanity evolved on a death world, Maya said, and the display showed Earth in all its chaotic glory. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, mass extinctions, and asteroid impacts flashed across the hologram in rapid succession. Our evolution was shaped by constant crisis, unpredictable change, and the ever-present threat of extinction. She paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. We developed not to maintain stability, but to adapt to instability, not to avoid conflict, but to survive it, not to seek consensus, but to make decisions quickly under pressure. Every aspect of human psychology and physiology is designed for one purpose: to thrive in conditions that would destroy other forms of life. The silence that followed was profound. Every delegate in the chamber understood what Maya was really saying. Humanity wasn't just different from other galactic species. They were fundamentally incompatible with the assumptions underlying galactic civilization. This brings us to the real reason for today's proceedings, Maya said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You are not here because you believe humanity has violated galactic law. You are here because you are afraid that we are going to replace you. Ambassador Kethvar shot to his feet, his composure finally cracking. That is absurd! The Zephyrian Collective has maintained galactic leadership for over 2,000 years. Our civilization is dying, Maya finished quietly. The words hit the chamber like a nuclear explosion. Even Chief Arbitrator Veltar's empathic senses recoiled from the emotional shockwave that followed. Maya gestured, and the display showed demographic data, birth rates, economic indicators, and technological development curves for all major galactic powers. The trends were subtle but unmistakable. Every established civilization in the galaxy was in slow decline. Birth rates below replacement level. Technological innovation slowing to a crawl. Economic systems becoming increasingly rigid and inefficient. Social structures calcifying into patterns that resist change of any kind. The data was brutal in its clarity. Galactic civilization was stagnating and had been for centuries. You created a perfect society, Maya continued. Stable, peaceful, prosperous, and utterly incapable of growth. And then we arrived. The display changed to show human colonies, their rapid development, their innovative technologies, their chaotic but vibrant societies. The contrast was stark and undeniable. In 50 years, we have achieved what your civilizations haven't managed in 500, not because we are better than you, but because we are built for a different kind of existence. Maya turned to face each delegation in turn, her gaze meeting that of every delegate. So, the question before this arbitration is not whether humanity has violated galactic law, she said. The question is whether galactic civilization is strong enough to survive the introduction of a truly alien species. She stood silently for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. I believe it is, she said finally, but only if you stop trying to make us into something we are not and start accepting us for what we are. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates began shouting accusations, demanding clarifications and calling for immediate recesses. But Maya Chen stood calmly in the center of the storm, watching the carefully constructed facade of galactic diplomacy collapse around her. What none of them realized yet was that this was exactly what she had intended to happen. Chief Arbitrator Veltar raised his staff, the crystalline head pulsing with harmonic frequencies that cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. The arguing delegates fell silent, but the emotional turbulence in the chamber remained almost visible to his empathic senses. Fear, anger, and a growing sense of inevitability swirled around the assembled representatives like storm clouds. The chamber will come to order, Veltar announced, his voice carrying the full authority of 3 millennia of legal tradition. Delegate Chen, you have presented unusual arguments. However, this arbitration was called to address specific legal violations, not to conduct a philosophical examination of galactic civilization. Maya nodded respectfully, but there was something in her posture that suggested she had been expecting this response. Of course, Chief Arbitrator. Perhaps we should address the remaining accusations directly. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show the disputed installations that had been characterized as military bases. The structures appeared as detailed 3-dimensional models, every component clearly labeled and explained. The Gorvani Trade Federation claims that human installations in the Kepler sector constitute aggressive military positioning, Maya said, her voice returning to its earlier mechanical precision. Let us examine that claim. The display zoomed in on one of the installations, revealing a complex but clearly non-military structure. This facility, designated Research Station Gamma, is equipped with what you have called excessive defensive systems. The defensive systems in question consist of point defense lasers, electromagnetic shields, and a small complement of automated interceptors. Maya paused, allowing the delegates to examine the specifications before continuing. These systems are rated to defend against pirates, asteroid impacts, and solar radiation. They are not capable of sustained conflict with military vessels of any major galactic power. Compare this to the Gorvani mining platform in the Rigel system. The display shifted to show a massive Gorvani installation bristling with weapons arrays, shield generators, and fighter bays. The contrast was stark and immediate. Platform designation Thokma 7 is equipped with heavy plasma cannons, multi-layered shield systems, a full squadron of attack fighters, and enough firepower to level a city. Yet this is classified as a mining operation rather than a military installation. Thokran's massive form shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The Rigel system has unique security requirements, he rumbled through his respirator. Pirate activity in that sector necessitates enhanced defensive measures. Indeed, Maya agreed. The same logic that applies to Gorvani operations in a system with documented pirate activity would presumably apply to human operations in a system that borders 3 different territorial claims and lies along 2 major shipping routes. The legal implications were clear. If the Gorvani could justify massive defensive installations for their mining operations, then humans could certainly justify modest defensive systems for their research stations. But perhaps we should examine what these research stations actually do, Maya continued. The display changed to show the internal workings of the human facilities, revealing laboratories, manufacturing bays, and communications arrays. Station Gamma conducts research into asteroid mining techniques that have improved efficiency by 30%. Station Beta develops new atmospheric processing technologies that reduce terraforming time by half. Station Alpha houses a medical facility that has developed treatments for 17 different diseases. Each revelation struck another blow against the accusations. The human installations were not only non-threatening, they were actively beneficial to galactic civilization. Now, Maya said, let us address the accusation that humanity has been expanding aggressively into neutral territory. The display expanded to show the entire galaxy, with territorial boundaries clearly marked in different colors. Human space appeared as scattered green dots, far smaller than the territories controlled by any other major power. The Zephyrian Collective claims that human expansion threatens established territorial boundaries, Maya continued. This is technically correct. However, the boundaries we allegedly threaten are claims that have never been legally recognized by the Galactic Council. She gestured, and certain regions of the map began flashing in bright yellow. These territories were claimed by various powers during the expansion wars 300 years ago, but the claims were disputed and never formally ratified. According to galactic law, they remain open territory. Dr. Isara's tentacles writhed with agitation. Those territories have been respected by all major powers for centuries. To suddenly claim legal jurisdiction is legal, Maya finished firmly. The Temporal Claims Act clearly states that territorial disputes not resolved within 50 years of initial filing become void unless all parties agree to extension. These claims expired 2.5 centuries ago. The legal technicality was devastating. Huge swaths of space that the major powers had considered their exclusive domain were actually open territory under galactic law. However, Maya continued, and something in her tone made every delegate in the chamber pay closer attention, the question of territorial expansion brings us to the real heart of this matter. The display changed again, showing shipping routes, resource extraction operations, and population centers across the galaxy. The pattern that emerged was troubling for reasons none of the delegates wanted to acknowledge. Galactic civilization has reached the limits of sustainable expansion under current systems, Maya said. Resource extraction is becoming less efficient. Transportation costs are rising exponentially. Population centers are beginning to strain infrastructure capabilities. The data was undeniable, but it represented problems that galactic civilization had been quietly ignoring for decades. Economic growth had slowed, technological advancement had plateaued, and quality of life indicators were beginning to decline across multiple systems. Furthermore, Maya continued, the current territorial divisions were established based on technological limitations that no longer exist. Faster-than-light communications, improved propulsion systems, and automated manufacturing have made the old boundaries inefficient and ultimately counterproductive. The implications of what she was saying began to sink in across the chamber. Maya wasn't just defending human expansion. She was suggesting that the entire structure of galactic civilization needed to be reorganized. Ambassador Kethvar rose shakily to his feet, his earlier composure completely shattered. You cannot seriously be suggesting that we abandon territorial systems that have maintained galactic peace for over 1,000 years. I'm not suggesting anything, Maya replied calmly. I'm simply observing that the current systems are failing whether we abandon them or not. She gestured, and the display showed economic projections, resource depletion timelines, and infrastructure degradation forecasts. The picture painted was of a civilization in slow but inexorable decline. Within 200 years, the Zephyrian Collective will face critical resource shortages in 17 systems. The Centaurian Protectorate's transportation network will become economically unsustainable within 150 years. The Gorvani Trade Federation's manufacturing capacity will peak in 70 years and begin declining thereafter. Each prediction hit with mathematical precision, backed by data that none of the delegates could dispute. Maya had somehow assembled a comprehensive analysis of galactic civilization's long-term viability, and the conclusion was terrifying. Humanity represents a potential solution to these problems, Maya continued. Our technologies, our approaches to resource management, our social structures adapted for rapid change, all of these could be integrated into existing systems to create sustainable long-term growth. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to drowning swimmers. But the delegates were too proud, too set in their ways, and too afraid to accept help from a species they considered inferior. Alternatively, Maya said, and her voice took on a harder edge, you can continue to treat humanity as a threat to be contained rather than a partner to be embraced, in which case we will simply continue doing what we have been doing. The display changed to show human colony ships under construction, new terraforming projects in development, and expansion plans that stretched far beyond current human territory. We will expand into unclaimed territory. We will develop new technologies. We will build new trade networks and establish new colonies. We will do all of this regardless of whether you approve or disapprove, because we are not asking for your permission. The declaration sent shock waves through the chamber. Every major galactic power was accustomed to having their approval sought for any significant undertaking. The idea that humanity would simply ignore their wishes was almost incomprehensible. The choice before you, Maya continued relentlessly, is whether you want to be part of humanity's expansion into the galaxy or whether you want to be bypassed by it. Chief Arbitrator Veltar's empathic senses detected something new in the chamber's emotional atmosphere. The fear and anger were still there, but they were being joined by something else: recognition. The delegates were beginning to understand that they weren't just facing a legal challenge. They were facing an evolutionary one. This arbitration was supposed to determine whether humanity deserved full membership in galactic civilization, Maya said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But the real question is whether galactic civilization deserves to survive humanity's participation in it. She turned to face each delegation in turn, her dark eyes meeting the gaze of every representative. We are not going away. We are not going to stop expanding. We are not going to limit ourselves to the role you have tried to assign us. We are going to continue being exactly what we have always been, survivors who refuse to accept limitations. Maya gestured one final time, and the display showed a projection of the galaxy as it might look in 500 years. Human space had expanded dramatically, but rather than displacing other civilizations, it had integrated with them. Trade routes connected previously isolated systems. Joint colonies flourished in regions that had been considered uninhabitable. Technologies developed through cross-species cooperation had opened new frontiers that none of the civilizations could have reached alone. This is what cooperation with humanity looks like, Maya said. A galaxy where survival isn't about maintaining static boundaries and rigid hierarchies, but about adaptation, growth, and exploration. The alternative projection appeared alongside the first. In this version, human space had expanded anyway, but the other civilizations had been left behind, isolated, declining, and ultimately irrelevant as humanity forged ahead into a future they could no longer participate in. This is what happens if you try to contain us, Maya said. You don't stop us. You just ensure that you aren't part of what comes next. The silence that followed was absolute. Every delegate understood that they had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had refused to be intimidated by the established order and had instead turned the tables on their accusers. Chief Arbitrator Veltar stood slowly, his ancient form carrying the weight of thousands of legal precedents and diplomatic traditions. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of law itself. "This arbitration will recess for deliberation," he announced. "The parties will be notified when a decision has been reached." As the delegates filed out of the chamber in stunned silence, Maya Chen remained standing on the central platform, watching them go with the same unsettling calm she had maintained throughout the proceedings. She had come to defend humanity against accusations of aggression and law-breaking. Instead, she had fundamentally challenged every assumption underlying galactic civilization and forced the other species to confront the reality of their own decline. But most importantly, she had given them a choice: evolve or be left behind. The silence stretched for 13 seconds after the last delegate had left, and then Maya smiled. It was the first genuinely human expression she had shown during the entire proceeding, and it promised that regardless of what the arbitrators decided, the galaxy would never be the same again. 3 days later, the Galactic Council voted to grant humanity full membership status. But by then, everyone understood that it didn't matter what they had decided. Humanity was going to the stars with or without permission, and the only choice remaining was whether the rest of galactic civilization would come along for the ride. Maya Chen had been silent for 13 seconds, and in that silence, she had changed the galaxy forever.